Well, Aristo was a little bit delayed getting there this morning, so we're starting at 9:55 my time, and his time, of course, is 7 hours later. And I'm
Well,
just going to say good morning and let him take it from there. Good morning, Aristo. Or good afternoon,
good,
rather.
well, good morning, Ron, and good morning, viewers. We do have a video today, so it's going to be hopefully the sound, the background noise isn't too disturbing to people. So, what to talk about today? Usually, whatever I come up with is a digestion of what's going on in your videos, Ron, and discussions with other people or things that have made an impression on me. And often it doesn't precipitate until I start talking. Usually a lot of things may precipitate before, but I can't remember them or keep track on them. This is completely unscripted. So I'm saying this because, as they say in occultism, as above, so below, as within, so without. Our lives are unscripted. Our futures are unscripted. We are living in a matrix where alleged matrix controllers or engineers or programmers are trying to script our lives for us. That is what makes us enslaved. Now, I make a distinction between being enslaved and being a slave. Being a slave is something that you are. Being enslaved or under slavery is something that happens to you. It is a distinction because if you admit to a truth or an alleged truth as something you are, you put yourself in the box of that identity. I do not agree with promoting that we are slaves as an identity because I do not believe that is true. I believe we are within a system that is designed and impelled to enslave us. So, and to keep us in bondage, in slavery. So, being bound to whatever degree, because there are degrees of bondage. So, it's not one thing. These are the traps of the mind. And I encourage us all to beware of the traps of the mind. In the past video, I talked about the analogy of the mind as government, the emotions as the people, the body as our natural environment. And we notice as outside, so within. The so-called controllers have hijacked governments, and they are trying to hijack the mind, our government. The so-called controllers are dumbing down the people. They are repressing them. They are enslaving them. And so culture tries to enslave, repress, and dumb down our emotions. They are destroying the environment, and so they are toxifying our bodies. And at the same time, they are telling the people, the emotions, that it's their fault that the environment is being screwed, guilt tripping us. So notice what's going on outside and what's going on inside. There are also the mind's tendencies, again, the mind trap, to talk in simplistic absolutes because complexity creates cognitive dissonance. Things get scary when they get too complicated. However, this is like going to school and by accident walking into the fifth grade classroom when you're really a first grader. Oh my God, everybody's a lot taller than I remember. Oh my God, I don't understand what the teacher's talking about. Oh shit, I'm screwed, And you're sitting there crying in the corner as a little first grader, and until somebody comes up and tells you you're in the wrong classroom, you're screwed. You get nothing out of the class, you feel depressed, and you don't want to go to school ever again. So that's just an analogy of how the mind can screw us into, losing our place in our relationship with our environment, so to speak, and taking on too much more than we can handle, or confusing the situation because we have entered a zone that is not viable to our understanding just because of our conditions. It doesn't mean we're smarter or better or worse or this or that or the other. These are labels that we need to beware of. And so, being calm in that sense, facing our fear, And what does that mean even? That's been oversimplified because people can just sit there and say, oh, there it is. They sit 10 meters away from the fear and say, that's my fear. And then they face it, look at it, or they face what they're afraid of, which is not facing your fear. It's not the same because you don't have the psychic space to actually engage with the energy, the experience of fear when you are facing an event that causes the fear. So if I fear heights, and I'm jumping around a little bit, sometimes I forget what I'm going to say, so I have to replace it with a slightly different, divergent topic. So bear with me; it'll probably all get somewhere. So if I'm afraid of heights and I go on the top of a tall building and lean over, I get scared shitless, and I'm not facing the fear. I'm facing the stimulus, and my response to the stimulus is going to be compromised by all of the reactions I need to come up with to deal with the stimulus, the threat. I'm not going to be dealing with my responsive dynamic, with my energy of fear. To deal with my energy of fear, I need to feel safe. I need to feel that the stimulus is not going to fuck with me. Okay? In order to truly face your fear, you need to be somewhere where the alleged cause of fear is not going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's been said that if you force somebody to face their fear and push them, it can lead to further trauma. It can lead to shock. It can lead to psychic breakdown in extreme cases. So we have misunderstood many, many things, partly because the matrix itself encourages such misunderstanding, and partly because our own tendencies to simplification. Because, this is what I wanted to say with the first grader analogy. Our tendency to simplification is natural because that's all we can handle. We have to break things down. So as we grow up, however, we can strengthen, we can learn. We learn in order to be able to go to the second grade, to the third grade, to the fourth grade. We don't need years to do this. But as we do, we can handle more complexity. We can handle the nuances of the complexity of the world and the input of the environment. When we do this, we can also understand the nuances of our own inspiration. So like I said, with the case of fear, there are nuances. Face your fears. Oh, I've been facing my fear. I've been, that's where I'm afraid, and I'm afraid of this. That's the mind labeling it. That's not facing the fear. And then running into the stimulus of fear as a physical, mental, or whatever event. That's not facing the fear. That's facing the stimulus of fear. It's like this. You have the government, the people, and the environment. So running around and trying to patch up the environment, i.e. facing the stimulus of fear, or running around doing something physical without dealing with other things, without getting allies in the people, for example, can get us in trouble. We can go out and face a threat and be overwhelmed by the threat, and we're not facing our fear, we're facing the threat. On the other hand, running to the government when the government basically is just listening to another, it's brainwashed or it's bought or whatever, the government is just going to rally its own forces against us. The same with the mind. We need to engage directly with the people somehow. And so, but how do I do this? Well, again, where are we? If it's too simple, if it doesn't make sense, then we need to strengthen ourselves. So let me try to hone this even more. Facing your fear means being immersed in the emotion of it. Being immersed, and not even the emotion in terms of how people describe emotion. Most people describe emotion as a symptomology. Tears, crying, vocalizing, shaking. These are external symptoms. It's not the emotion itself. The emotion is something you cannot describe directly. You have to convey it. You might be able to look into someone's eyes and they can feel your emotion. Or you can empathize with someone. You're not describing the emotion, you're feeling it. And the same thing with yourself. We try to tell each other to empathize with each other. How many of us can truly empathize with ourselves? And this, I don't mean superficially, because all of us can empathize with ourselves to a degree. But how deep can we take that empathy? How can we, how can our internal government contact the people, our internal people, in our internal environment? Um, when this happens and we are immersed in the fear as an experience, our environment will begin exhibiting symptoms that do not have anything to do with the external stimulus. However, they are a replacement dynamic of the external stimulus. What does that mean? It means that, okay, somebody runs and threatens you and you're afraid. Okay. Now, you are somewhere safe and you enter into your fear. You're reminded, you create a pseudo stimulus, a memory, and you start feeling that fear. The mind jumps in and says, okay, I'm afraid. Let's jump to the next topic. Oh, no, sorry. You're not there yet. Really, really feel it, really live it. Let's take it this way. Oh, before I say that, when you really, really live it, you will feel your body experiencing the symptoms as if the event were happening. So I'm afraid of being killed. You have to raise that fear level to the point where you would respond exactly right before the axe falls and splits your head open. It's that. And that cannot happen easily because we're resistant to that. And we will block. And then what you do, you notice what the block is. The block is attention. It's a numbness. It's the mind trying to get away desperately, bring us somewhere else, you see, because the mind doesn't want to face it. And if it's not faced, then the external stimuli will be empowered. If it does face it, you will create an internal symptomology which will affect your body. The body is your immediate environment. It's the first environment. So this is where you are creating your own reality. You are creating a reality because your body is a reality to you, right? So you might say the world might not be affected, but that's okay. You need to start somewhere. A lot of us try to jump off into the outcome or into the what goes down the line, or let's do this because it has a reaction. And there may be a whole bunch of steps in between that we're not addressing. For example, this goes back into prayer. I meditate, and when I meditate and pray, so to speak, I do not ask for peace. I ask for integrity, I ask for inspiration, and I ask for strength. I also ask for health and to be able to have enough leeway in my material life to be able to make a difference and to be fulfilled in doing so. Now, the thing is that what I get is not a solution of, okay, go there and you'll get what you want. I get steps. And sometimes the steps have nothing to do seemingly with what I want. What is this you're telling me? Sometimes I won't even listen to the steps. I mean, it took years to be able to hone my nuances enough to be able to look into what the step actually is. My mind is so focused on what I want over at the other end that I can't listen to the response to what's coming to me. Sometimes it's paradoxical. Most of the time, I notice that there's a numbness, a block, because even if you don't get a response, you can tune into that void. You can tune into the silence of no response, and you will notice maybe that it's not quite a dead silence, that it's your own tension, your own resistance, your own impatience for something else or whatever. But if you tune into it, when I tune into it at least, and from what I understand, others on occasion have done the same, I noticed that there was fear. Fear of this, fear of that, fear of the other. But fear of is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about fear. We are not encouraged, in my opinion, to face fear of. We are encouraged to face fear in itself, the response, the energy. So when I faced this energy, my internal environment went into chaos. It went into tribulation. And my mind tried to explain it, tried to prophesize where the outcome would be. And so it took time to be able to tell my mind to shut the fuck up, to just go over and sit in the corner with a dunce cap and just stay there until the people inside could deal with the environmental dynamic. There was an internal tribulation. Now, when I engage in an internal tribulation, I strongly feel, and I've seen nuances of this in my experience as well, that I am draining the energy from the probabilities of external tribulation. Well, did I make the world become better? I don't know, but I do know that some disaster that I may have met in a certain future was averted because I changed by facing fear. And that change caused me to make different choices, maybe paradoxical ones, maybe ones that didn't make sense. And that these changes that I feel made a difference in my path. And sometimes in my psychic awareness, I feel that they make differences in the world. I notice nuances of other people's moods are different. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets a little better, and then it tries to get worse again. The point is, it's not something that you can get, often we try to engage with these things and understand them from the first or second grade when we need to go into high school to really make sense. Now, the thing is, if we really look into ourselves, we're teenagers. We're not first graders. It's just that the matrix has dumped us in the first grade classroom, has knocked us over the head, and we are somehow stuck with a little thumb in our mouths, convinced that we're little toddlers and that we don't have power or strength because we can't see it, because we're surrounded by others who think they're toddlers, and a teacher who's trying to teach us the ABCs in a language we can't comprehend, a fabricated language, a false language, a language of lies. And we're trying to build truths out of a language of lies. And we have to get out and move into a zone where we can access resources that we do have, because we're not children. We may be teenagers, but we're not children content to suck off of a mother's nipple. We're not content for our future to be given to us, to be put in a nursery, to be, for whatever reason. If everything is settled and we're put into a benign controlled society, we're going to get freaked out and want to leave. And it's going to be more insane. That's when we are going to revolt, because we won't be afraid because it's benign. However, when we're threatened into a nursery and locked into playpens that are really prisons, then we start slowly falling asleep into that and thrashing about. Where is the gate of liberation? The gate of liberation is engaging in the deeper levels of fear. You can't force this. And we have so many defense mechanisms that won't take us there. It is a great challenge. So when I did pray to God, say, what do I do? And years ago, it was like, first, well, you need to face, first of all, why can't you hear my voice? Well, I don't know. You're not talking loud enough. Well, if I talked louder, your brain would explode. Or the world, if a big hand came down from the sky, the world would fall into ruins because everybody is clenching so hard, like a car accident. The driver usually doesn't get injured because, or a drunk person doesn't, the driver doesn't get injured because they somehow, are part of the process of the accident. But the passenger, if they're drunk, they say, will not get injured because they're relaxed. So if you're tense and you're in a car accident, so they say, you will very likely get very injured or killed. But there is a greater likelihood that you will get less injured or not injured at all if you're so relaxed, you're like a little rag doll. So if we are tense in our repression, because when you're afraid and you're resisting, you're tense, right? You're gritting your teeth, imagine what's going on the inside. Imagine what's going on at the energy level. We talk about Birkeland currents and all of this, and the earth changes. And well, how can the current plug into us if we're rock solid in tension of resisting our own inner process? How is this ever going to metabolize a change in us if we just keep out, stop, I don't want to, and this is very subtle. So it's, what's God going to do? Break down the door, tear down the house to get to us? That ain't going to happen. Because we're going to say, God, why were you so violent? Couldn't you do it gently? Stay out, come in, stay out, And no, I'm not doing that. No, not consciously. The government isn't, or says it isn't. But again, there are internal processes of our government trying to give certain aspects of ourselves placating dynamics, doctored belief systems, and of course, you have the matrix, the offshore influences of our being that are trying to manipulate us into capitulation. Now, the thing is, we say we can't influence reality. The mind is helpless. Well, wait a minute. I mean, and I've said this again. Would anybody try to control our minds if our minds were helpless? Really? I mean, would they go to the very trouble of trying to spend billions and all these resources to make us run around like chickens with our heads cut off? I say that the proof that we create our own reality is that others are actually managing to do it. You know, others are actually creating reality, their reality on us, and they've also created the reality of us being dumbed down and not being able to create our reality. How do I know this is true? Well, I'm versed in certain occultisms, certain esoteric topics, and I know that when somebody curses you, that's exactly what they do. That's one of the things, black magic, as they call it. Now, this doesn't mean weird robes and pentagrams and hopping around and worshiping I don't know what. There's a fine line between black magic and mind control. It's using psychic energy to do harm. And I perceive this in the ethers. So facing my fear is basically the one thing the so-called magical zone is going to try to stop. But it's part and parcel of the fact of why am I afraid? Because I haven't, this is the backlog of the underworlds. The underworlds are not somewhere else. They're within us, just as God is within us. So the repressor mechanisms cannot, they don't work anymore. And from another point of view, I'm not saying that, that's the true point of view, but from another reality point of view, aside from the reality of them fucking us or trying to, there is the reality of us repressing ourselves, and that the pressure of the so-called underworlds is empowering external situations to get our attention, even if they have to kill us. And this has been going on for 5,000, 10,000 years, because that's when, even prior to Atlantis, humanity began waking up in terms of the potentials we have now. I mean, if there were no issues, we probably would have woken up 100,000 years ago. Whatever some New Age channelers say was the right path, But the fact is, you can't really explain it that way, because all of the issues are part and parcel with creation. Now, how things appear is a reality, and it affects us. What I'm saying is it may not be the only reality, and it may not be the first useful reality to address in order to deal with the implications, with the experiences. When I'm finding myself in challenging circumstances, I ask myself, what can I do? Well, I can go out, I can protest, I can do this and that and the other, but I'm like, does that feel right to me? If it feels right, then I should go do it. But if there is a tinge inside that says, warning, warning, are you sure you really want to do this? For whatever reason, maybe it's mind control, maybe it's whatever, but until I find out, I believe I have an obligation to myself to explore that. And most likely I will find fear. I don't want to go out because I'm afraid. I said this before. But at the same time, perhaps I'm afraid because I don't want to confront my fear from the outside. Because if let's put it this way, you want to really do what all these people suggest. Okay, that's well and good. First, play it out in your mind. Do what race car drivers do. I saw these documentaries of race car drivers. They sit in a little room and with their hand extended out as if they're clutching a gear shift, and their feet extended as if they're, tapping on pedals, and they go through the whole racetrack with every turn, every gear shift, every twist of the, steering wheel in order to play out the optimal responses to a given situation. When you have
That's done in many sports, by the way.
It's done in many sports, and it's shown to be very effective. And so, well, you can say, well, the race car track is predictable. It's a static. Well, a football game isn't. You don't know what well, maybe there's plays. But a baseball game isn't. There's scenarios. You might hit a home run, but even that is kind of structured. How about a soccer game? That's not predictable. That's a lot less predictable. Anybody can cut you off and get the ball, and what are you going to do? See, you have certain probabilities. Imagine yourself doing that protest with your signs and everything, and go deep into your psyche, and this time let your fears play out. The cops come and start beating people up. What are you going to do? Somebody pops up with a chemical gas that kills everybody. What are you going to do? All of these things that what does the establishment usually do? Or they're going to demonize you as a terrorist. Your neighbors are going to hate you, this, that, and the other. And you're going to say, oh, that's negative thinking. It may be negative thinking, but the fear is there. It's the negative thinking is simply trying to make a story out of the fear. The funny thing is that if the fear isn't addressed, the secret little wire of you controlling your reality, but not in the way you want, is going to be plugged into that external zone, and it's going to empower those probabilities. Usually, when I fall asleep, if I try to think happy thoughts before I fall asleep, all of my repressed nightmare stuff comes to the surface, and I have bad dreams. This has happened time and again. If I replay my fears before I fall asleep and just let my body shake and move and whatever, feel the electricity of it, and then take deep breaths to allow my natural metabolism to digest the energy at the body level. Take it out of the emotional body, okay? That's the way you do it. Let the mind take a vacation, okay? It's the emotional body, the people in the environment that are going to fix the world. It's not the government, okay? It's not the ones in charge, the hierarchy. They're going to take responses and advice and designs from the government and all of that once they get their act together. But how can they do that? There's instinct. There's things called flash mobs that the establishment is afraid of. There's a lot of things, a lot of connections, a lot of internal organizations that can happen. But one good thing is to create a template within to address your own microcosm. And so if you go to sleep, for example, before you go to sleep, you feel this, and you feel your body, feel your belly, feel everything, circulate it, take deep breaths so your metabolism can absorb the energy from your emotional body. Your physical body is incredibly capable, just like the environment can recover from almost anything. So your physical body, your metabolism, your biochemical, plus its etheric counterpart, can take, reorganize, and then the cycle goes back to the emotional body, and your physical body says, hey man, it's okay. The environment's fine. I've relaxed. I've moved through. I've digested this energy. Well, where's the energy gone? Here it is. Now you have a sense of excitement. Oh, wow. Like on a roller coaster. If you go on a roller coaster the first time and have no clue what the hell it is, you're scared shitless, maybe, if you've never heard about it. The second time, the third time, the fourth time, you know exactly what it is, and it's fun. It doesn't become boring. Yeah, if you keep doing the same thing, but if you keep going on occasion, it's fun. The adrenaline still rushes, but you're not scared shitless. You're excited. That's where the energy, and then if you're excited, you can start looking at the world a different way. And you say, wow, maybe there are options that weren't there. But then the government comes in. And the government says, oh, I don't have to protect you anymore. Because your mind government is not chipped. It's not hijacked yet. This is like the United States after the American Revolution. It's not the United States in 1935. So, and that's where they want to bring us. So there is hope in that sense. And all of this mind control stuff and everything. Again, it helps me to view the stuff in terms of occultism because there's a fine line. I don't know where the so-called truth ends and the lies begin in terms of what the matrix is. It doesn't matter, but I'm still sovereign in a certain sense within my own responses, especially if I can address my fear on my own terms. If I can do that and allow my body to process it, this takes time, especially for people who have never truly done this before. Many spiritual type people do not only give lip service to what the body can do. And I don't believe there has been much addressing. I see it in Chinese medicine. They have the abdomen and they Sometimes they take, if you have a negative emotion, just take it down into your belly, and just like your bellies digest food, they can digest the negative emotions. There's been experiments done with brain waves and everything, and this truly happens. And it's not repression, because you're relaxed and you feel the energy, and you're in there and say, where is it? Okay, I'm completely feeling this, and I feel fine. I feel excited. The thing is, there's just so much of it, it's not going to happen in a day. But you might be able to hear glimpses, like the radio channel to your prayers. The static is, and then you'll hear, hey, are you there? Are you there? You might hear something like that. On occasion, there's an atmospheric phenomena, and the channel's clear, and you get something, and wow, God spoke to me, or I have an insight. Then, the weather phenomena, so to speak, the solar flare, whatever, passes. The Berkman current that's trying to jolt us awake passes, and it goes back to status quo. You see, there is the other side. You can say God, ETs, whatever, are on their level trying to reach us, but for whatever reason, we have to take steps to reach them. Not just cry out to them, but if there are changes in the environment and changes that actually facilitate our transformation, and I believe they are. I've had experiences myself in tuning into such things. Personally, I believe there are. But I always had to work for it. I'm not saying do specific exercises and this and that. Everybody has their own way. But I'm just presenting certain fundamentals that may be difficult to understand, because even this information, there's going to be a ton of black magical matrix negation to it that's going to try to turn you away. It's like when you want to go exercise, you're going to start procrastinating. Anything, because it's dissonant, it's stressful. This whole matrix, and again, mind control, black magic, whatever you want to call it, is collectively designed to force us to stop any attempt at making a difference. And if we do have an attempt, to make us blind to whatever tries to sabotage that attempt. We need to deal with these things in our microcosm. Even if we want to deal with them in the macrocosm at the same time, we need to prioritize the fact that, well, our empowerment in the macrocosm in any way, and even collectively, comes from our engagement in the microcosm. So to answer the question of, if I say, what do I tell my children or other children, aside from I did my best, if the world is fucked, there won't be any children to tell. So yeah. The question is moving.
That's what I've said. Will we have future generations if we keep going the way we've been going?
Exactly. But if there are future generations, then I'll tell my children the story of how I made it. And I'll emphasize to those children that it wasn't easy, and that I am the generation, and my humanity and this collective is the generation of actually overcoming not only what previous generations could not, although it was a process of coming up to this point, building up, so I don't, negate all that or criticize it. And the fact is that the inheritors of this, the would-be inheritors of this, have all the potential of understanding the healthy acceptance of everything, because it's not like they'll be little children in paradise. They'll have innate activation dynamics of wisdom. Whatever you said, whatever you had implied, God should have made things like. Why can't we have these issues resolved within us as we awaken into adulthood in a normal human lifespan? Why do we have to deal with them from the outside? Well, in order to forge them on the inside, the way things are, out of the gaps of separation that were necessary for manifestation to emerge from unity, this crisis was practically inevitable. So we will be not just the wise generation if this happens. Our souls will carry the seeds of inoculation for the whole universe, the omniverse. And I believe that if any other ET cultures, as I had said many times before, had done it, we would have been the ones inoculated. They may have done it to a certain degree, to the point that we have the potentials we have now to overcome it, but the overcoming was never actually done. And that is probably why the ones that can make a difference aren't. Because it's a matter of, well, if the body doesn't build antibodies, then what's it all for? Because they Since they didn't overcome it, they're not in a good place. They may not have destroyed themselves, but they have sacrificed something. Maybe they sacrificed the emotional body. Maybe they sacrificed their biology. Maybe they sacrificed, even love. I don't know. A lot of them did, and they became the so-called negative, I don't know what. So there's a lot of things going on that we may not know and we can't know if we're expecting some channeler to tell us, because the channeler is human, And everybody, and that's the thing, even in that article that said about the shutdown code, the one about, karma and all of that being some...
Oh, yes.
All of that. People were saying, you speak like you have authority, like you know what you're talking about. And everybody was like, and I'm pissed off with people like that, because this Drake character, this Fulford character, this David Wilcock character, we worship them as the big saviors, and then now we hate them, or we're suspicious of them. What's the truth? I'm tired of listening to authorities. It's like, yeah, dude, you're tired because, it's time for you to be your own authority, to make your own decisions, to make your own assessments. You only take bits and pieces from the field anymore because we're not going to find the truth out there. That's enough. The mind is totally fucked. I mean, the minefield, the field of information, the so-called information age is a fabricated matrix piece of crap that's full of shards that we are challenged to grasp here and grasp there and build our own construct of what we understand to be truth. And how do we discern? It is our emotional body that determines things. It is the people's vote. But if the people are repressed, they cannot vote. If the voting machines are hijacked by the government, the mind, and false votes are being cast, then our discernment is crap. We're going to fool ourselves again and again and again. So that's why it's important to heal the emotional body by using the physical body plus its etheric energy counterpart as the healing dynamic. And that is, again, why they're burning the candle at both ends. They're toxifying the physical body, they're corrupting the mental body, and the emotional body is in between. They can't really hurt the emotional body directly. We're the ones who are doing that. They are just triggering the government and the environment to be so adverse to insulate the middle class, so to speak, the people, the emotional body, and isolate it, because that's what they feed off of. And so, but they feed off of it because that's where the power is. But the power is useless without full integrative cooperation between the body and the mind. The body has its role as the healer, and the mind has its role as the coordinator and organizer. But the true machine, the engine, so to speak, of transformation is the emotional body. All of these things we can understand through, all I'm giving is my own experience and my own insights, the result of my own prayers and meditations. But again, we tend to worship the authoritative figure so much, even when we don't, even when we say, I'm sick and tired, the very fact that we're angry that authority seems to have betrayed us shows that we wish there was somebody who could tell us what to do, even though we're actually very likely angry at ourselves for not being able to figure it out. And not only that, but underneath that anger, if we explore it, there's probably the fear of our impotence, our identity as maybe we are slaves, maybe we are weak, maybe we are worthless. One of the black magic currents that I'm sensing is a constant teletype. You can call it mind control. Maybe it's some weird satellite that's beaming it. You're worthless, you're going to die, it's the end of the world, it's over, it's over, it's over. It's constantly being beamed in. And even if you get into a deep meditative state, you can feel this coming in, trying to infiltrate. And so if your meditation is trying to make you get out of it, then you may divorce yourself from the emotional body. And I'm not saying to be in it constantly. I'm saying to get out of it the other way. Go into your emotions, into your physical body, because you will find spirit there. God is in the depths now. And instead of looking for God or whatever in the heights, we need to find God through the depths. God is on the other side of the back door of hell. Okay? But in our microcosm, not in the macrocosm. That is my perception. Thank you for bearing with me once again.
Okay, by the way, your last video, I heard both from Margie and from one of the other people in the workshop that Margie recommended it to everybody and is sending it to everybody that was at the workshop as a recommended listening.
Is this like an audio type, the one that was just
That
audio?
was the one, the previous video.
Okay, we're talking about
Margie
here.
was very, very moved by that and recommended it to the entire workshop community, as far as I understand it.
I'm very glad. Thank you, Margie, for your consideration. And I hope this video, which addresses some of the same issues and basically elaborates on them, will be useful to people as well.
Well, thank you, Aristo. We went about 40 minutes or so, so very good. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving, even though you don't do Thanksgiving probably.
Well, I'm the one who should say happy Thanksgiving because you're there.
Okay.
God bless America.